Welcome to Days of Roar, Detroit Tigers podcast, brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. I'm Mark Gorash. I'm with my partner, Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold, and somehow we have survived another week of Tiger baseball. How you doing, Ev?
Yeah, Mark, doing all right. It's been a long week of baseball with not many wins. Granted, there were two in Houston that I thought were pretty impressive. I was not there for that series. Jeff Seidel was out there for the Free Press covering that series in Houston. Now I'm back on the beat. Now we move forward. Tigers played 3 games at home against the Red Sox. They're going to be headed on the road Monday, beginning today, to go and play the Toronto Blue Jays. That series starts on Tuesday. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tough schedule. We've kind of talked about it all along, and it's been a rough start for the Tigers, but it's nice for me to be back home in Detroit. I mentioned my cat several times on this show. I will mention them again. Savannah, too, of course. It's nice to be back home and around her and around family. Coming off an Easter celebration, got a chance to go to church in the morning and hang out with some family in the afternoon. So some good vibes for me right now. But how are you doing, Mark? I don't ask you that enough. How have you been recently?
Well, I'm doing pretty well. First, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Easter. Hope you had a great holiday weekend. I'd also like to wish all my people a happy Passover, which I celebrated and got a chance to be with my family, all the way from my 85-year-old mother down to my 21-month-old grandson. My nieces and nephews, it was pretty awesome. My son did the cooking. It was a lot of fun. And, altogether, I think we both had a pretty great week, minus the fact that we had to watch Tiger baseball a lot. So
that's the thing, Mark, too, real quick, is I root for good stories. Like, you don't root for the team, right? That's kind of like, general, kind of beat writer thing. But I love good stories, and I was so jealous of Jeff. He got to go cover the 2 games where the Tigers just looked great in Houston, and Spencer Torkelson was coming alive, and Greene was coming alive, and the at-bats were great, and they went out and they won 2 games against the 2022 World Series champs. And I told him, I said I was jealous of him because I could just feel his emotion. Like, you kind of latch onto it. When guys are feeling good, they're going good, they want to talk to you, they want to have conversations. That's kind of when the best storytelling happens, is when the team kind of tells that story for you. And it hasn't been much of that since then. It was a loss in Houston on the last day, and then, getting swept by the Red Sox, and just feels like more of the same of what we saw earlier in the season, right at the beginning there against the Rays. Well, it's head scratching, but also, it's not really that surprising when you look at the roster and you dive into it.
So I'll put my positive spin on this, which is, we like to break things out in weeks. We do podcasts every week, and first week, 0-3. Second week, 2-4. Now sitting at 2-7. But when you look at the week as 2-4, maybe we don't look at it quite as negatively. Those first 2 games in Houston, thank God for those first 2 games in Houston, showed us a little bit of some of the good things of what they could be, and aside from those 2 games, it's been 7 games of hell. So
pretty much. No, I mean, 2-7 record, fewest wins through 9 games since Tigers lost 8 of their first 9 in 2008. We talked about last year and the year before, and just the rough starts that they got off to, and how, you felt like before we even got to the summer months, the season was kind of over, just in the sense of, playing competitive baseball or being competitive or making things interesting, or showing some fight into the summer and leaving you thinking, well, maybe. We didn't get any of that the last 2 seasons, and it doesn't look like we're going to get any of that this season.
Well, I think it's a little early to write off a lot of things, even in the season where we went 69-61 in the last 129. The first 33 games were a nightmare. If you remember, I think they were 9-24 at one point, and it looked a lot like...
It was bad, but they turned it around.
Yeah, it looked a lot like it looks now. I hesitate to think that's happening, only in the sense that learning a little bit about AJ Hinch, he did have a bullpen to get him through his last 12 outs, which is his go-to way of managing. It doesn't seem like currently we have the makings of something like that. But let's get into a little bit of, in these first 9 games, what we've learned. And I caution everybody by saying, in 9 games, there's really very little that you can make assumptions of. There are a couple of things, though, that are very, very concerning. And let's kind of jump into those, and then we'll talk about some things that are good.
The things that I've noticed kind of right off the bat are just, I think trends is maybe a better way to put it, as opposed to making these, big picture statements of, well, this isn't good, or this player isn't good, or this or that, right? Like those things can change as the season rolls on. But I think just kind of like from a general standpoint, if you're looking at trends, I see some position players with upside. I see some decent starting pitching that hasn't been able to finish key innings. And I've also seen inconsistent relievers who are sometimes thrown into the fire when, maybe I think that the starters should get a chance to finish out the inning. And we'll talk about that later. But I do think those are kind of the trends that I'm seeing, right? You go back to the Houston series and what they were able to do there, and you see the position players with upside. You see what Matt Vierling is able to do. You see what Spencer Torkelson can do. You see what Riley Greene can do. We've seen at times what Nick Maton can do, just working counts. Look, I understand Nick Maton. Outside of Sunday's game, he went 0 for 4 with 4 punchies. That's no good. But outside of Sunday's game, I think his at-bats have been pretty darn good.
Really good.
And that's impressive to see. Right. I mean, he's working deep into counts. He's making pitchers battle for everything that they're going to get. And he's drawing walks when the opportunities present themselves. So I think those are some encouraging things when you talk about young players having some success and trying to find their footing at this level and really trying to establish themselves. All 4 of those players are trying to do that. And we've seen it in bits and pieces. And we definitely saw it in those first 2 games in Houston. So it's in there. And that's where the upside piece comes in, right? Like, you're not going to be encouraged by what you're seeing. I understand they scored 1 run on Sunday. They've been getting blown out. The run differential is just it's putrid. It's terrible. I mean, it's miserable. But there are signs of an offense here. Even if Nick Maton and Matt Vierling are role players in the future, and neither of those guys break out and are all-stars, you like the way they're handling their at-bats. I think there's some positive signs there. But I still think, Mark, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too, a lot of what they do this season, and maybe into the future a little bit, but as far as what they do this season on offense, does it all really just come down to Riley Greene and Spencer Torkelson? Like, is that really what it just comes down to? Because that's certainly how it seems to me.
I've had a lot of people say that to me. You're saying that to me now, and I couldn't disagree with that premise more vehemently. If that's what everything in this season is about, they're going to suck for a really long time. I think they are merely a part of a bigger picture. They are part of other players that will be here before the season is over with. They need to start establishing a core. Can they be at the top of the food chain as far as leading the core?
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. But they have to be part of a core. So if the season is dependent on 2 players and that's it, this is going to be a really short tenure for Scott Harris. Means he didn't do his job very well, and the team's going to continue to suck. So I couldn't disagree with you more. I think so far what we've seen can be crystallized in 2 things. To use a Scott Harris term, strike zone domination. And where the hell is that? Where the hell is that throwing the baseball? Where the hell is that offensively? Strike zone domination, currently MIA. Okay. 2 of my baseball mentors, Bruce Fields, Ken Howell, both great coaches, both great baseball players. They both said to me, Mark, don't ever, I'm not really impressed by what guys can do sometimes. I'm much more interested in what guys can do all the time. The difference between a major league average regular and a AAA baseball player is a major league average regular can do stuff all the time, almost every day, almost every at bat. You know what you're going to get. They can leverage mistakes. They do good things given the opportunity. AAA guys, sometimes, once in a while, sometimes not. Don't really know what you're going to get. And right now, that's the entire roster of the Detroit Tigers. Yes, some guys are flashing more than others. Riley's flashing more than most guys. Torkelson flashing more than most guys. But when it really comes down to it and it's winning time and day after day, you don't know what you're going to get. And that is part of the necessary growth that needs to happen this year. And we need to find out who's sometimes, who's all the time. And that's kind of where we're at right now. It's been a lot of sometimes, not too much all the time.
Well, that's kind of how I feel. And that's why I asked you the question about Riley Greene and Spencer Torkelson, is because it's like those are two guys that you expect to be all the time. And Riley's maybe been a little bit more all the time than Spencer has so far. But the next question then is like, okay, who else kind of emerges? Like, is there anybody on this roster that really has the potential to emerge? Can Kerry Carpenter emerge and be an all-the-time type guy? Can Ryan Kreidler, can he hit enough to emerge as an all-the-time kind of guy? Nick Maton, like Matt Vierling. I guess it's a good thing that some of these are unanswered questions, because that means there's something to find out. And don't get me wrong, there are also guys in the minor leagues too, and we can touch on some of that as we go. But I mean, that's Parker Meadows, that's Andre Lipsius, that's Justin Henry Malloy, Wenzel Perez. I mean, those are some guys that are kind of right at the forefront of my mind in terms of position players, at least, that are you going to be an all-the-time guy, or are you going to be a sometimes kind of guy? And you're right, that is the difference. That's something that, again, you bring in Javier Baez, Mark, and you expect him to be an all-the-time type dude, and he has just not shown up whatsoever through these first 9 games of the season. He's almost nowhere to be found, hitting 121, 2 walks, believe it or not, with 7 strikeouts, just uncompetitive at bat after non-competitive at bat, over and over and over. There are situational moments where you just say, okay, just put the ball in play, and he strikes out. There are times when you say, okay, let's try to work a deep count and get a good pitch to hit, and he's swinging first pitch, and it's a terrible first pitch outside the zone, and it's a rollover ground out. Like, Javi Baez has probably been the most disappointing part of this season for me so far. I'm willing to watch Greene grow. I'm willing to watch Torkelson grow. I'm willing to watch Ryan Kreidler take reps, and I love what he's doing in the field. AJ Hinch has said it best, right? He's an impact player on defense. Can he hit enough to stick around? We're about to find out pretty soon, because in this league the clock ticks, and there are players that are pushing for opportunity. The list kind of goes on and on of guys that you want to figure out, okay, what are they going to be? What are they not going to be? The one guy who you expect to be an always guy is the guy that you signed to a 6-year, $140 million deal, and that's Javi Baez. He hasn't done it whatsoever.
I think you could live with the inconsistencies of Javi Baez, that even if he was a sub 200 hitter when he was slumping, if he occasionally hit the ball out of the ballpark once in a while, especially with a couple guys on base, you could probably deal with the fact that he was so inconsistent at the plate. The biggest issue that Javi Baez has had as a Detroit Tiger is, aside from the month, the last 6 weeks of 2022, he just hasn't hit the ball out of the ballpark. Defensively, better than we think. Still crazy frustrating the last few days. Keeps throwing the ball.
It's mixed feelings for me.
Keeps throwing the ball into the ground. Javi Baez, if you just watch him, and maybe we're reading too much into that, doesn't look like he's having too mumuch fun. I can tell you that. So,
well, I mean, I understand that though. You're playing for a team that's 2-7 and looks like they're going nowhere. I understand. I get it, right? I mean, his best years were obviously when he was younger in his career, right? I mean, we have to remember that, Javi Baez is now 30, and things change a little bit as you get into your 30s, just in terms of, the body, the way that you play, and the way that you take care of yourself with pregame prep and postgame prep. And there are just extra things that you have to do as you get older. But he plays his best when he's in the most intense environments. And Tigers don't really give off intense environments, and there definitely aren't intense environments at Comerica Park, just in the sense of, you're not going to pack that house every day. Comerica Park isn't going to be loaded with fans all the time. That's not to say that the fans, aren't willing to show up, but they want to see a good product on the field, and that's not what's happened so far. But yeah, I mean, you can live with Javi Baez's strikeout problems. If he's hitting some dongs out of the ballpark, look at what he did in 2021, 184 strikeouts. That led the National League, and hit 31 home runs and hit 265, and you're all good with that, right? Like there are no problems there whatsoever. I mean, going back to 2019, 156 strikeouts, 29 homers. The year before that, 167 strikeouts, 34 homers. If he's going to strike out a ton, if he's going to have uncompetitive at-bats at times, fine by everyone, but he has to go deep. He doesn't have an extra base hit yet this season, Mark.
Yeah, he looks a lot like the exit velocity of Zach McKinstry, which we'll just kind of leave at that.
Well, that's
a different discussion.
That's still head scratching to me, but he got a chance to pitch though, Mark. He did. He gave up a 2-run shot, but got his chance to pitch.
I'm glad Zach got a turn on the mound. Good for him. So let's also touch on a little bit about something that surprised us yesterday, and we're not going to dig too deep into it, but we do want to share our opinion about it, which is Austin Meadows has gone to the DL with anxiety. It's something that's extremely unfortunate. It's something that I think both you and I want to make very clear that we both have experience with, and we are very, very sympathetic to the circumstances, and anybody that does not feel that way obviously has never suffered or had a close friend or family member suffer from anxiety issues. I'm sure it's very frustrating for Austin. He thought maybe he was on his way back from it. It's in a very insidious type of situation. You don't have control over when it pops back up or when it's going to rear its head, and we wish him the best.
Just to kind of give the news and to kind of explain some of what happened as it unfolded. Obviously, it was before Saturday's game, and the Tigers had actually told Akil Baddoo, who was playing in AAA Toledo, to be ready to come to Detroit. And he had got that message after Friday night's game. And he was playing with the Mud Hens in Omaha, and he traveled to Detroit on Saturday morning and basically kind of got the green light to come on over. And yeah, so Akil woke up at 4:30, took a flight at 7:30, and ended up, having to drive around in Ohio to get some bags and then drive up to Detroit. And he ended up getting there in time, and he started in the game on Saturday. And so as all that's happening, 30 minutes before first pitch, the Tigers make the announcement that Austin Meadows is going to be going on the injured list with anxiety. And first things first is you feel for him. And it's really a bummer. I mean, I sat and I talked to him on FaceTime for about 45 minutes before spring training for a Q&A story that I did. And he talked a lot about just all the things that he did to kind of, get himself back to where he wanted to be in the offseason. Talked about transforming his mental health with a team of therapists and also changing his physical health too, after just being sidelined for so long and really getting back into the workouts and feeling the best that he has felt in a really long time. He talked about the mental health impacting him most right when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And it kind of hasn't been the same since then for him. And then he mentioned the trade to Detroit, when he was traded right before opening day in 2022, that was April 2022, really sparked a resurgence of that mental health, struggle that he's having, that anxiety, and called it an anxiety monster, and talked about having panic attacks and, just some things that he went through, last season. And he seemed optimistic though, right, Mark? As he seemed like he was, on the right track. He had a team of therapists in Detroit, that were kind of in place to help him. He had his newborn daughter and his wife that were going to be in Detroit with him throughout the season. And so, I was shocked when I saw the news of what happened. Again, first and foremost, like, it's just, you send your prayers out to him and you just pray that, he's going to be able to make it through, because I've been there. You've mentioned that you've been there, and so many of us have been there. And it's something that, a lot of men, I feel like, don't really like to talk to. So I commend him for coming out and, saying that he's dealing with this and that he needs to take a step back. But man, it's just really tough. It's really tough considering where he was coming into spring training with his brother in camp. And it just seemed like things were really looking forward. And then you get hit with this news out of nowhere. Man, you just hope that he gets through it. You just hope that he gets through it, regardless of the baseball stuff. As a man, you just pray for him. That's how I feel.
Baseball's a game of failure. Really can play on your mind. And anxiety is a mental health disease that is very serious, very difficult to navigate. People do get better. We wish them the best. From a baseball standpoint, without delving too deep into this, what I will say is if you're the Detroit Tigers, you can't really plan on when you think Austin Meadows is going to return from this, and you just have to move on, trying to assume that he may not play very much this year. It's a very difficult disease to navigate, and it's not like a broken bone or a sprained ligament where you have a timeline of how long it's going to take to get better. It's not that kind of injury. So we wish him the best, and we hope people will, have some empathy for somebody that's truly suffering. I don't think anybody feels worse about this than Austin Meadows does. All right. Well, we're going to take our first break. We'll be back in a moment. We're back. All right. I want to start touching on some things that we discussed a little bit last pod, but I think we at least want to bring to light our opinions about a few things and understand that we're reading way more into this than we know. This is purely speculation, what makes a podcast fun. But I'm a little curious how the dynamic is between AJ Hinch and Scott Harris about now. AJ, if you really pay close attention to him, kind of lets you know how he feels about things, not just in the post game. And he was a little fired up today in the post game. If you were listening to what he had to say, I know I enjoyed it, and I would expect nothing less. But more importantly, how he deploys some of the players tells you a little bit how he's feeling about it. And I think we kind of touched on this about Zach McKinstry last pod, and he did nothing to lead you to believe that, Zach McKinstry is now the 26th player on the Detroit Tigers, and he is not really getting many, or let's just say that his opportunities have dwindled. And he played right field today, didn't start. Scope played second. And who can blame Hinch? He's searching at this point in time. So I think that's a point of contention. And I think, as we mentioned in passing last Monday, he cannot be very happy with what he's been provided as a bullpen. And we talked about this, but looking back on it now, Tigers payroll, which was, somewhere between 16 and 18 last year in Major League Baseball, it for sure was not, a bargain basement payroll. It was about $135 million last year. It's about $120 million right now, and $32 million of that is for a DH that'll get 300 at bats. That's, not something that they could have ever planned on. So it's not exactly an expensive payroll. Yet, you'd think that he could have understood how his manager managed, and that was pretty easy to understand if he would have done some homework. And yet he refused to spend $10 million and get himself two major league caliber relievers and at least give AJ Hinch an opportunity to manage a baseball game without it being roulette. So, I know that frustrates you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I think I go right to the home opener. I go to Thursday's loss and the situation that unfolded there in the sixth inning. There were 2 runners on, 2 outs in a tie game, and AJ Hinch has to go to Jose Cisnero, who in his previous start had given up a 3-run shot to Yordan Alvarez in Houston. And so he goes to Cisnero, and it's a situation where, all right, like you got to get this out. Like he has no better options. That's kind of what it comes down to. Is it's basically Jose Cisnero or Alex Lang. Neither of them, in my opinion, throw enough strikes. Neither of them look clean right now or crisp whatsoever, but it's the highest leverage situation. The Tigers needed to strand those 2 runners above all else. And who'd they go to? They went to one of their better high leverage relievers, and that's Jose Cisnero. And what happened was, he poorly located a 2-strike fastball. He thought it was a really good pitch on the outside edge. The Tigers wanted it more up. He put that ball more, kind of, right on the outside edge as opposed to going up and in. And all of a sudden it's a 2-run homer and the Tigers are down. And you just wonder, Mark, like you scratch your head and you think, man, like what if the Tigers just had a different high leverage reliever they could go to that wasn't named Jose Cisnero in that situation? What if they had Andrew Chafin, or what if they had Michael Fulmer? Andrew Chafin was, I thought it was a slam dunk to bring him back, but it didn't end up working out. Michael Fulmer, I'm not sure if the Tigers were really even interested in getting too deep into discussions with him. And those are 2 guys. You look at what Andrew Chafin is doing for the Diamondbacks, and you go look at what Michael Fulmer is doing for the Cubs, and it's pretty darn good. And it makes you think, is that a game that they could win if they would have had, one of those guys or both? Maybe. Again, we don't know because it's a game of what if. But at the same time, AJ Hinch hasn't been given a bullpen that he can really rely on. It's all about getting these last 12 outs. We've talked about it over and over again, but that's the truth. And AJ Hinch is best when he has a great bullpen to work with. Not even a great bullpen, just a good bullpen to work with. And it's a lot of mix and matching right now. It's a lot of throwing random, parts at the wall and seeing if they stick. But this it's a disaster. The bullpen is a complete disaster. There's no one that you feel fully comfortable with. The guy that I probably feel the best about right now is Jason Foley. I think he's pitched pretty good. But other than that, it's almost impossible to feel good about anybody that they're rolling out there right now, wouldn't you say?
Look, you feel good about Jason Foley because he threw a dominant 4-hitter outing today. And
yeah,
but
right.
I think, if on Tuesday night you're bringing him in to face Vlad Guerrero Jr. with 2 on and 1 out in the 5th of the tie game, you're not exactly wrapping your arms around that and going, yeah, we'll take care of this, no problem. So, it's a disaster.
There's nobody that gives you that feeling. There's nobody that gives you that feeling
Correct.
of, oh yeah, got him.
Right.
We're good. That's not there. That doesn't exist.
You're still hoping. It's still like buying a lotto ticket every time you bring a reliever in, and everything that worries you about Alex Lang, is still, apparent in every outing. He has no fastball command, and you pray he spins enough pitches once things are going poorly to get out of the inning, and most of the time he does. And yes, it's early, and guys haven't really gotten into, rhythms about throwing strikes, but at the same time, you virtually have zero chance to win unless you hit your way into a crazy, crazy day at the plate when you have, a bullpen that you're going to need to get, between 10 and 12 outs every day. And it's impossible to know what you're going to get from that. So,
which is what they did in Houston, though. I mean, they hit their way to those 2 wins, but that offense isn't going to produce like that every single night. We've already seen that through 9 games.
Yeah, and
you need your bullpen to slam the door.
And listen, I've said nice things about Scott Harris. I still don't mind as much as most people do their position player situation outside of second base. And I think as the season grows, their hitting will grow. But, what he's done with this bullpen and the position he put his manager in is just 100% unacceptable. And I don't think there's any other way to explain it. As far as the starting pitching goes, I think my feeling and small childish tantrum the day they signed Matthew Boyd is on the record. Boyd hasn't been terrible, but he's been far from good. Turnbull, I really need to see something from shortly. Not real encouraging what I'm seeing, not seeing much swing and miss. I'm a big Joey Wentz fan. I'm going to write yesterday off as a bad outing, but their starting rotation is also had its issues. You're going to get Lorenzen back here soon, and right now you got a 2-7 baseball team. You're going to play Toronto, who does nothing but mash at home, and we'll see what happens. It's kind of the same feeling though we had going into Houston. That worked out fine. So we'll have to see what happens. So
I don't know though. I think the starting pitchers haven't really helped out the relievers either. Like I understand, how you feel about the bullpen, and I feel I share the same feelings. Just considering the talent of those pitchers and the situations that they're being asked to deliver in, but also the starting pitchers haven't been able to throw strikes. We've seen that over and over and over again. Through 9 games, relievers have inherited 22 runners from starters, and 12 of those runners have scored. A lot of that is because of walks. So I think it's easy to point to the relievers because you say, there's not many power arms to get outs in big situations. But also I feel like the starters deserve some of that blame for the lopsided scores. I mean, both of these two teams, or both these two groups of pitchers, starters and relievers, have thrown about 40 innings this season, and the starters have 23 walks and 23 strikeouts, and the relievers have 14 walks and 31 strikeouts. So the starters aren't doing the relievers many favors with the way that they're walking hitters. And in all 9 games, the starters have failed to provide a clean runway for the relievers. So basically in every game, a fresh reliever has been asked to come in and take over for a laboring starter in the middle of the inning.
Yes.
But many times it's because too many walks. It's a walk problem. It's a dominate the strike zone problem. What was promised hasn't been followed up on in that way.
All right. So let me give you one of my little points of data. Detroit is currently allowed the most inherited runners to score in Major League Baseball at 12. Their inherited runner percentage is at 60%, which is tragically low for any bullpen. So they've entered with 20 inherited runners, which I think is 27th in baseball, and they've allowed the most inherited runners to score. So I understand your premise of they're constantly being put in a bad situation, but I think, for lack of a better way of saying this, I still call a little bit of bullshit on this, because my answer is do your damn job. Your job is exactly that. When you need to come in and get 1 or 2 outs to get you out of an inning and to keep the game, reasonably within distance of being competitive, and you keep allowing inherited runners to come in 3 or 4 at a time, it makes for a pretty, unfun baseball game after, that happens. And it's just happened way, way too much. I get it that you're saying starters need to do a better job. Yes, but relievers, do your damn job. Okay.
Well, some of that too, though. I mean, look, you can't avoid what happened to Spencer Turnbull in Tampa Bay. Like when that happens, of course, it's going to be in the middle of an inning. When Joey Wentz has his blow up, it's going to be in the middle of an inning. I get that. But I go back to Matt Manning's start in Houston, where he gets Yordan Alvarez to line out. He strikes out Jose Abreu looking, and then he walks Kyle Tucker. And the next batter is Corey Julks, and Jason Foley gets brought in. Now, Jason Foley, gets a weak fly ball and innings over, and that's fine. But I want to see Matt Manning finish that inning. I want to see Matt Manning face Corey Julks and try to get through it, finish out the 6th, and then give Foley a clean 7th inning. And that's kind of my take on it. And that's that big of a deal. Like I understand your point that you're making. Like if you're a reliever and you're coming in and there's a runner on base, just do your job and get the 1 out or get the 2 outs that you need to get. But I think in certain situations, I'd like to see some of the starters, finish out their innings and show that they can power through it. Even if the matchup isn't entirely favorable, I want to see what these guys have. Like, I want to see if Matt Manning can go out there and do it. I want to see if Matthew Boyd can go and finish it and kind of walk off the mound feeling good about himself. Like, yeah, I just finished that. Of course, that could backfire, right? And then AJ Hinch has to take all the questions about why he left the guy in. So I understand it's kind of a double-edged sword in that way. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I just think pitching staff as a whole needs to do a better job. I think it's do your damn job, not only for relievers but for starters as well.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the offense. The offense is, aside from 2 games, been unbelievably abysmal. Worse than last year. Coming into today, and today was not very good. They had a 52 WRC plus, which means they were 48% worse than league average. That placed them 30th out of 30 baseball teams, and that's coming off a season where I don't remember if they were 28th or 29th, but it was one of the two. They had an ISO, which is basically how much power you're hitting for, of 0.92. That is just tragically bad, which means they're not hitting for any power. I think they had 4 homers on the year, or basically not quite as good as Adam Duvall's season has gone this year. And they had scored 26 runs before today, which I also think was either last or second to last in baseball. I know you looked at some of these numbers too. So all in all, not acceptable. To place all the blame on Tork and Riley Greene is kind of foolish because, to be honest with you, I think both of them have had a pretty decent amount of good swings. Vierling had a good game or two. Maton hasn't done anything yet. Baez has been absent. Scope has been absent. They really, Eric Haas is really truly struggling. I did tweet something about Eric today. He, I think, hit 172 in April and May last year. And then after that, the last 4 months of the season, I think he had, close to a 140 WRC plus for the last 4 months. So I can tolerate a slow start by Eric Haas. He's not going anywhere, and he's at least has some legacy of performing well. But I want to get a little bit into Riley Greene, but you tell me what your thoughts on the offense. You've seen them take swings the last few days. What are you seeing?
Look, yeah, I'm encouraged by Riley Greene, Spencer Torkelson, Matt Vierling, Kerry Carpenter, Jake Rogers, Nick Maton. I know he hasn't hit, but go look at the walks and the strikeouts. It's really not that bad. I think he just needs some time to settle in. But yeah, like outside of that, it's the veteran guys that just aren't getting the job done. Javier Baez is not playing very well. Miguel Cabrera is not playing very well. Jonathan Scope is not playing very well, and he is now in a platoon role. And I think we need to talk about that, just in the sense of kind of what's next for Jonathan Scope, because I do think that that's a guy that you think would be able to hit 20 plus home runs and be able to hit 260, 270, and we're not seeing any of it. The at-bats are completely non-competitive. So some of the young guys have been encouraging, but look, the offense as a whole, yeah, I mean, coming out of Sunday's game, it's a 4-way tie between the Tigers, Royals, Marlins, and Athletics for, teams with 27 runs. That's worst in baseball. The Tigers are at 27th in baseball with 23 walks, and they're at 22nd in baseball with 90 strikeouts. So, yeah, not a lot of good things. The batting average is low. The ISO, as you had mentioned, is pretty rough. So maybe a slight improvement in walks and strikeouts. And by that, I mean they were dead last over the last 5 years in both those categories. So maybe a teeny tiny improvement there, but still not enough to say that you're dominating the strike zone. Not even close. The Jonathan Scope one, to me, is interesting. I mean, the guy who's making $7.5 million in the final year of his contract, you're paying that whether he plays for you or whether he doesn't. So I think, regardless of what they do there, you're paying that money, no matter what happens. But Mark, I mean, are you at a point now where you're ready to see what guys like Tyler Nevin can do or Andy Ibanez can do? I think it probably starts with Tyler Nevin, just considering that he's playing a lot of third base in Toledo, also plays some first base and can play some corner outfield. Scope has kind of moved over to now being more of a third baseman than a second baseman. Scope is only playing, for the most part, against left-handed pitchers, rarely playing against right-handed pitchers. He's got a couple walks, which is impressive because that's pretty rare for him, but not hitting the ball, still striking out a lot, just doesn't really look comfortable. I know it's only been a handful of games and he's in a platoon role, so he's not getting a ton of opportunities, but at what point do you think, look, this guy's got a 4.1% walk rate in his career. It ain't getting any better. What time do you cut bait?
Well, here's what I have to say about Jonathan Scope. Been a good pro, but real simple. They're paying him the $7.5 million, whether he's here or not here.
Yeah, no matter what.
And at some point in time, if he's hurting you more than helping you, you're still paying the money. What's he doing here? I mean, if you can bring somebody else up that can help you more than John Scope is helping you, why is Jonathan Scope here? So, and it's pretty simple to me. It's pretty cold. It's, you're stuck for the money, period, end of story. So who they bring up, that's something they got to figure out. Ibanez got 3 homers, plays 3 positions. Nevin, these are all guys that have never really played regularly. Malloy, people want to bring up Jahan. I'd like to see him keep getting more at bats at Toledo. He is hitting reasonably well, walking a ton, needs the experience at third base, hasn't hit for any power at all at Toledo yet. So I think he needs the at-bats. But, I have other issues. I think I kind of teased this a little bit, but I've been doing some dive on Riley Greene and his, well as he's kind of scuffled his way to at least acceptable production so far, I'm starting to get concerned because I've started to pay attention to how his at-bats are going in a specific part of his game, going back all the way to when, in 2022 included. And I've come to notice that Riley Greene does not pull the ball well or make, do damage to the pull side of the field literally at all. And not only that, he hits the ball into the ground at an excessive rate. So I went back, I had our buddy Chris Brown help me a little bit. We went back and looked at some Savant numbers. And when Riley Greene pulls the baseball, almost 74% of the time he hits the ball on the ground. And if you hit the ball on the ground, you're not going to do too well. His pull numbers are pretty low. His slugging percentage is in the 3s. I look back, I think he pulled 1 home run to dead right in his career so far. Almost all of his power is oppo or to the left of second base or slightly to the right of second base. And that's where he hits the ball hard. It's a swing flaw. It's kind of rolling over on things. And you're going to start to see major league pitchers try to exploit that. You're going to see Riley Greene getting pounded on the inside part of the plate more and more and more as each series goes by. It's something to pay attention to and to see if they can't help him make a small adjustment to see if they can get him to beat the pitch to the spot out front. I think Torkelson is a tremendous example of small changes making big impact. And, Spencer hits the ball hard quite a bit. Even when he's making outs, he's hitting the ball hard at least once a game, if not more. And he's beating the pitch to the spot where he did that almost never last year. He's doing it often this year. And if Riley Greene wants to go from being a 265, 270 hitter who only uses, 50% of the field, he's going to have to work hard to try to expand his game to be able to hit the ball to the pull side. And I think you'll agree with me, starting around May 1st, going into September, the place in Comerica Park where the ball flies by far the best is to straight right field. So it'd be a shame if that's not part of Riley Greene's game, and he needs to start getting the ball in the air and he needs to start being able to pull the ball with authority.
Well, that's the conversation that we've kind of been talking about for quite a bit of time, really going back to coming into spring training, just where the ground ball rate was last season. And Riley talked about trying to get to these pure thoughts at the plate. And he said that he spent a lot of time in the offseason working on getting pitches that, were kind of down by his knee, and he was able to turn on and drive down, basically, and try to take it right to the foul pole, like a direct pull. And we haven't seen it translate so far. I wonder if it's a velocity thing. I mean, maybe it's a bat path thing. Maybe it's a combination of both. Maybe it takes too long for him to get his barrel over the plate because of how compact his swing is. And, obviously when you're late on a pitch, the barrel becomes tiny and it's harder to make contact with a smaller target. Maybe that's the case. But it's interesting. You go back and you look at some of his heat maps and you look at his ground ball rates from back in the 2021 season when he was crushing the minor leagues. He didn't struggle to elevate anywhere inside. I mean, he was able to take those pitches and he was turning on those pitches. And we saw some video of it as well, if you don't forget. But it's confusing to me because he was able to turn on pitches in AAA and in AA in 2021. And then suddenly when he gets to the big leagues, he's not able to turn on those pitches in the same way. And you're seeing a ton of ground balls when teams are throwing him inside. And really the only way that he's elevating right now, and this was true last year too, was, middle and up. Basically, were the two areas where he was able to elevate the ball, get it in the air, and do some damage. Whereas in 2021, that wasn't the case. He was able to get to those inside pitches. So that makes me wonder, maybe it's a velocity thing, and the combination of velocity and, the bat path, could that be a reason for some of these struggles and not being able to get the barrel over the plate against that velocity? Maybe. I'm not going to act like I'm a hitting coach and know what I'm talking about, but I'm interested to know your thoughts. You've seen a lot of baseball. You've been watching for a long time. I mean, does that kind of make some sense and as to what we're seeing?
Bat paths are a function of swing flaws. So yeah, he's got an attack.
He's very sensitive about his swing, though, too. Yeah, I mean, it was a swing crafted by his dad, and he's had it forever.
I don't blame him, and I would be too. But I think if you sat down and had a talk with him about this, he would acknowledge it's an issue for him and an issue that needs to be addressed. And how they address it is, why you have three hitting coaches and a lot of video. Okay, it's an attack angle issue. It's a rolling over issue. It's been going on for a while, and it's going to get worse before it gets better if they don't address it and start working on fixing it, which I am sure they're A, aware of it, and B, working on it. It is what it is.
Would you agree, Mark, though, that that's the difference between him being a great player and him being a good player?
I think it's the next phase of his game. Okay. I think I like where his game's at. He's a good player now. In order to be a very good player, he's going to need to fix this.
I agree.
So, all right, we're going to take our last break. We'll be back. All right, we're back. Well, we got an interesting week coming up. You got Toronto on the road. You got the Giants at home. I know you are going to taking the tunnel or the bridge across on the 409?
I'll take the bridge. I'm going to go up to Port Huron and go through Sarnia and head over that way. It seems like I have my easiest trips going that way, and I like driving through Toronto as opposed to flying. I mean, I've never flown to Toronto, I guess, but I drove once and I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was easy, and it gives me the luxury to, right when that game ends and I'm out of there, after the series finale, I'm able to book it back here and try to get as much sleep as possible. So I'm driving, and we'll see how it goes.
It's about a 3.5 hour ride, if I remember.
It's really not
right.
that bad. Yeah. It's really not that bad. No,
it's not. It's kind of like driving to Cleveland a little bit in distance. So
basically,
that should be fun. Good ballpark. Really, really good baseball team. Have some phenomenal players. Just to Springer, Bichette, Guerrero. Chapman. I mean, it'll be a gauntlet to go there. And then they have
Don't forget about their catchers either.
Yeah, they have some. Well, Jansen's been struggling. Kirk can hit if it was the middle of winter. So, good baseball team will really make you pay for mistakes. And got a few there. And then we come back, play the Giants. Should be an interesting weekend for Scott Harris. Giants are not a great baseball team, but not necessarily a lot worse than the Red Sox are. So we saw what the Red Sox could do to the Tigers if the Tigers don't play better. I'm hoping by playing every day that maybe they can start getting into some rhythm, because, if not, it's mentally really a drag to keep getting your ass kicked every day. And I'll be curious to see if they can improve, their consistency level and at least start having some better days from time to time. I mean, it's been 7 very terrible baseball games out of the 9. Hopefully they can at least start being more competitive on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, Mark, it's a long time until we get to mid-May when the Pirates come to town to Comerica Park. I mean, that's really the Tigers' first chance where you go into a series and you say, okay, like they might be able to beat up on the Pirates a little bit. Until then, it's a really tough schedule. Tuesday, it's going to be Matt Manning against Alek Manoah. Wednesday, Eduardo Rodriguez against Kevin Gausman. And Thursday, Spencer Turnbull against Chris Bassett. Those are the pitching matchups coming up for the Tigers against the Blue Jays. Manoah's pretty good. Gausman's pretty good. Bassett's pretty good.
It doesn't sound.
It's tough.
It doesn't sound like they're getting encouraging news going to Toronto. That's 3 pretty good pitchers, although Bassett has been struggling a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about some things. The minor league season opened this week. Some things happened. I would encourage everybody, if you want to get good video or a fast look at what some of the Tiger minor leaguers are doing, and I hate to plug somebody else's stuff on our podcast, but go to Tigers Minor League Report. They do great stuff. You can watch a cut-up of the day's starting pitcher, and you can get an idea what's going on. They had a super good performance from Ty Madden yesterday that was pretty exciting. For those of you that don't know, Ty Madden, high draft choice 2 years ago from, I think, Alabama. And he is a testament to what the Tigers player development system has been able to do with a few people. They did a lot of work with Joey Wentz, and it looks like now they've done a lot of work with Ty Madden. I don't know, did you get a chance to take a look at that or no?
I kind of watched little bits and pieces of it, but Ty Madden from Texas, by the way, Dylan Smith from Alabama.
Right.
Either way. Look, guys were talking about it in the press box. All right. It was going on during a Tigers game. And, there are a few of the writers there that like to, watch the minor leagues on their iPads as the big league game is going on. And so, there were words about the strikeouts and what was it? 10 strikeouts, no hits over 4 innings or something like that. Mark, I know you were paying closer attention to it than I was, but it looks like he's got a little bit of a leg kick to kind of sync some things up and getting himself to tunnel in some pitches now. I mean, he looked pretty sharp from what I saw.
Yesterday, he threw to 13 hitters, gave up 0 hits in 4 innings, struck out 10 of the 13, walked 1. It was a hell of an outing. But more encouraging than that, player development's done a few things with his motion. He's got a little bit of a leg kick now. 2 things coming out of the same tunnel. He had a little bit of a curveball last year. He had a lot of bit of a curveball last night. I can't remember how many whiffs he had with it, but they were numerous swings and misses on his breaking ball. It's encouraging to see that they've helped him develop stuff that looked a lot more promising than what I was looking at last year. For those that know me, I was not a real big Ty Madden guy. What I saw, the tweaks they had made and the polish they'd added to him yesterday, it was a much different looking pitcher with a much deeper, more efficient looking arsenal. So that was pretty promising. Nothing else really going on at Erie to speak of. Cole Keith, he's had a few good swings. They haven't hit too much at Erie yet. Down below, really not a lot of overly exciting things going on at either West Michigan or Lakeland. Nothing too much from Peyton Graham, nothing too much from Christian Santana. Pacheco had a couple hits, I think, yesterday. But, the minors are a place to be paying attention to. We'll do a lot more of that as the season goes on. And as far as, much more concerned about what's going on in Toledo. What about you?
No, hey, look, I want to say don't feel bad about giving Tigers minor league report the plug on the pod, because I plug him into the story all the time. I mean, I was writing something, Sunday morning before the game about Michael Lorenzen coming back soon, recovering from a left groin strain that he suffered in spring training. He pitched for AAA Toledo on Saturday, and it seems like that's going to be his only rehab start. He gave up 4 runs on 2 hits and 3 walks with 2 strikeouts across 2 1/3, and threw 56 pitches. AJ Hinch talked about throwing strikes wasn't perfect, but he felt good and the stuff was okay, and seemed like he got a pretty good workout in, feels ready to come back. And I said, all right, I want to try to find a video of this guy throwing to kind of plug into the story, right? I always like to do that. If something's going on, I want to try to find a video so readers that are going to freep.com to read my stuff can get a chance to kind of see some visual with it, so they can make their own assessments at times too. I think that's important. And the first place I always go is Tigers minor league report, because they do an amazing job of cutting up video, getting it out there, and getting it out there quick. And I think that's always pretty important. So shout out to those guys. But yeah, Lorenzen's good. He's going to be back. It sounds like he's going to pitch in the series against the Giants. So he's not going to pitch against the Blue Jays. Tigers already have their rotation set with Manning on Tuesday, Rodriguez on Wednesday, and Turnbull on Thursday. And then they come back home and play the Giants. It seems like we will see Michael Lorenzen make his first start in the big leagues with the Tigers, in the Old English D in that game. He's an interesting guy, someone to kind of keep tabs on. I mean, Scott Harris went out and grabbed him for 1 year, $8.5 million this offseason. He pitches the starter with the Los Angeles Angels last season for the first time in a full season since he was a starter back in 2015. All the years in between, he was a reliever pretty much exclusively. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get the most out of him. I know that they're pretty excited about trying to optimize him. I am very concerned about his ability to consistently throw strikes. But nonetheless, that's a Scott Harris guy, so someone to watch.
I'll be curious to see who they send down. I would wager, knowing how Scott Harris operates, it'll probably be Joey Wentz. But
I think so too.
Hopefully they don't wait a long time. Not that they have tons of relievers on their 40-man, but if Wentz is getting demoted, he's getting demoted for Tuesday's game, and they're going to bring up a reliever.
Definitely.
They'll then demote the reliever and bring Lorenzen up on the day he starts. So, look for that. As far as other moves, be interesting to see what the other moves are. I'm a believer that Parker Meadows will be up sooner than later if he starts to demonstrate anything close to what he did this spring. He hasn't really hit for power yet. Once he warms up from a power side, I would expect him to be up here playing center field and Riley to move to left pretty quickly, unless miraculously Akil Baddoo starts doing a lot of good things. And what he did in the 9th inning today kind of took away from what was a pretty good day at the plate for Akil Baddoo, but that was not a very competitive at bat to close the game in a leverage situation. So
1, 2, 3 out of there, right?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, go take a seat. It's time to eat. So I also will say that once the Pencil Perez is back playing, so I played 3 games this weekend at Lakeland. It's something to pay attention to. Wenzel can hit, plays second base, he hits left-handed, and all those things are things that the Tigers need. So
switch hitter, actually.
Yep. So something also to keep an eye on. And, for the week, it was pretty forgettable. Hopefully we can have a lot more fun this week. So I think it might be time to wrap things up here, Ev. So
that's about it.
I'd like to thank our executive producer, sports editor Kirk Crawford, our other executive producer, Anjanette Delgado, our producer, Robin Chan. As always, I'd like to thank my grandson, Braden Michael Gorash. I'd like to thank Savannah. I'm sure you're happy that Evan's home. I'd like to thank Evan's cat for behaving well. And, I'd like to thank everybody for tolerating such terrible baseball. We'll be back again next week. Hopefully, we'll have more fun things to talk about than this 2-4 week. And I'd like to say, peace.